Welcome to Uncommon Engineering. Yet again, another amazing episode. I'm Dan Hawkins, head football coach at UC Davis, and we have with us today Steve Robinson. He's a professor at UC Davis. He is an accomplished musician, he's an accomplished professor, and he's an astronaut and has worked with NASA for close to 40 years. And we're very fortunate to have him here at UC Davis. A tremendous story of perseverance, and certainly no one more uncommon in many factors, let alone the astronaut portion. Welcome to the show, Steve Robinson. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Coach. Great to be here. Great to have a bunch of Aggies out on the other end of the camera.
Well, I thought it was serendipitous. Mark Honbo, our producer, we were talking about yesterday, the National Space Day. So we actually were trying to get you a day before that. We didn't know that was going to happen, but certainly a celebration. Just talk to us the many things. I think, Steve, I don't think everybody realizes the benefits that we get in science and on Earth from the space program. What is the value of the entire space program?
Well, to us who work in this business, every day is Space Day, so it's always a good day for that. And I think we are true believers in the value of space programs as a technology engine for society at large. We learn to do things by going to space that we probably wouldn't have learned, or not at the rate, had we not had a space program. I'll give you a couple examples. Miniaturization of electronics, software engineering, materials that are light, strong, communications over long distances, all the kind of things we sort of take, for granted today. A lot of them were pushed forward dramatically by the space program that we've had for the last 60 years.
So let's go back here when you were a young boy. I think did you fly when you were 14? Did I read that correctly? Was that when you got involved with flight?
Yeah, it was a little while ago, yeah.
Come on now. So you're an aspiring astronaut as a young boy, and then you work to get yourself into UC Davis. And just tell us about the path of your wanting to be an astronaut. How did you come to think about that, and just your path? I know when you talked to our football team a couple years ago, I thought it was very interesting, your trials and tribulations and the things you had to go through to get there.
I think, on your way to a dream, nobody takes a very straight line. I did not at all. It was a very zigzag, jumpy path. And I can't say that I had it all planned out, but I did. I kept my eye on a couple of different prizes. For some reason, I just was born with a passion for flight, the things that fly, and I wanted to fly. I wanted to know how things fly. I'm still that way. One of my great joys at UC Davis is teaching aerodynamics, and which is the science of how things actually fly. I've never lost that fascination, but that started when I was just a tiny little kid. And so I was of the right age to be growing up during the very beginnings of the human space program. So when I was a kid, all the neighborhood heroes were Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, and John Glenn. We always wanted to be those guys, and we were astronauts for Halloween, and it sunk in with me, I guess, and kind of merged with my love of flight. I mean, the ultimate flight would be to fly in space, and so I thought, that's what I want to do. But the chances of doing that are so small. I mean, it was just sort of this way out there dream. But at the very least, I knew I had to learn more about flight. And I found out in high school. Well, in high school, I started building hang gliders because it was the only way I could afford to get myself in the air. And so when I was 14, I built a 40-foot wingspan hang glider in the backyard. And nobody thought I was actually going to try to fly it. So let me tell you, if you have a 14-year-old, do not let them build a huge hang glider and jump off a huge mountain with it. That was not advisable. Somehow I survived building quite a few different hang gliders. And I found out that UC Davis had an aeronautical engineering department, and it had an airport. And I thought, that's the place for me. And I still feel that way. That's why. I got my degree, my undergraduate degree here, and left and came back, I don't know how many years later, to teach. And it's been the same excitement that drew me back to UC Davis.
Talk to the folks about how many times, I think you said something that was really resonated with me, that being an astronaut, I think, was the dream, and working for NASA was the goal. And I know that was that, I don't know if that's correct, what you had said. That really resonated with me a little bit, but I know you got rejected time after time from NASA. Just take us through that journey.
Well, I learned the philosophy over time, over the experience, that, and maybe it's a philosophy of self-preservation, but that if you're getting rejection letters and if you're getting told no, you're pushing your own envelope. You're at the edges of where you can possibly be. And that's not for everybody. It's not necessarily the right thing to do. But if you're that kind of person, you're going to get told no, you're going to be turned down. And, I have all kinds of rejection letters that I consider to be, kind of certificates of honor. I think one of my most disappointing rejection letters was from UC Davis. When I applied to UC Davis as a freshman, I got a letter. I still have that letter on UC Davis letterhead. It says, "We regret to inform you that you were not accepted here." And but I persisted because I have a hard head, I guess, and I do differentiate. In my mind, this is the way I do it. I don't know if it works this way for everyone. I have goals, and if I set myself a goal or an objective, I won't let anything get in the way permanently. I will just keep at it because I have the control. And even if I'm knocked down or pushed back, I have the control. I go around, I go over, I get back up, I reach that goal. It's not so different from being in school, from being in sports. It's kind of that kind of philosophy. But next to that, the way I carried it in my mind is I had kind of a category of dreams. And a dream was something I probably didn't have full control over myself. But it served as a motivator to be a better version of me. And flying in space was definitely the dream category. The chances of getting that, making that come true are so small. And you can do everything you can think of to do, and there's still very little chance of doing it. So there's a lot of, right place at the right time and fortune. So that's how I kind of differentiated between things. And so as I pursued various things, like trying to get into UC Davis, I was turned down, and I pursued trying to get into the astronaut business. And I think it was about 12 years between the time I first started applying and the time I actually arrived as an astronaut. And I have a whole collection of rejection letters. And I have to say that I have this great pair of letters, both on UC Davis letterhead, this same letterhead. One from a long time ago that says, "Dear Mr. Robinson, we reject you. We regret to inform you that you're not accepted at UC Davis." The other one is, "Dear Dr. Robinson, we're pleased to welcome you as a tenured professor at UC Davis." Same letterhead. I'm really happy about that. And kind of in between, lots of stuff happened.
Where did that resolve come from, Steve? I mean, how did your parents treat that? Surely when you told people I want to be an astronaut, they laughed at you. I mean, where did you kind of just gather that sort of fortitude and drive?
Well, I can't say that I didn't have any doubts along the way. There's nothing like getting turned down from the dream of your life over and over and over to put doubts in your head. But by trying to move forward again, by losing your momentum with the rejection and trying to find a way to get traction and move forward again and generate some torque on the wheels and plow into the mud, as it seems, you learn coping mechanisms. You learn to have confidence, maybe not in your own infallibility, but you have confidence that no matter where I am, I can make things better. And then wherever I am after that, I can make things a little better after that. And I suppose I got that from my family, who for some reason has moved countries every generation, the last few generations, looking for a better life, And my parents came from Canada. Their parents came from Scotland and Ireland and England. And I think we just have a hard-headed bunch of people in our family.
So I think you walked into Marac Hall, is that right? Which is the administration building at Davis, and convinced them that you should come to UC Davis. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is another thing you probably shouldn't try. But anyway, I borrowed my parents' car. When I got that rejection letter, I will never forget how disappointed I was, because I was so set on coming to UC Davis and studying aeronautical engineering. And so I borrowed my parents' car. I did not tell them what I was doing. And I drove up to Davis and I parked in that circular parking lot in the front of MRAC, and I walked in and asked where the registrar's office was. And I brought it up at the letter, and somehow over the next hour or so, I talked them into it, and they accepted me into UC Davis as a freshman.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
So it was a great moment.
You go through UC Davis, you have numerous attempts to get into NASA, and just take us through your journey there a little bit of getting into NASA and all the work, and then obviously climbing into the astronaut program.
That was a long and winding road. I was paying my way through college at Davis, and I ran out of money twice, so I left twice. But I was fortunate when I left that I got internships at NASA. So I got a chance to work at NASA before I was qualified at all to do anything. I didn't know anything. And I remember the first day I started, my boss, who was to become my boss for about the next 14 years, but I remember what he said was, he looked at my tiny little resume, which said that, I know how to mow lawns and pull weeds, and I had 1 year of college. He said,
and the DJ experience, you forgot the DJ experience.
Oh, that was much later, later.
Okay.
This was while I was still a sophomore, I guess, so just beginning of sophomore year, I think. And I remember him saying, there must be something we can do with you. So, but it worked out pretty well. I remember that they had a brand new computer in the group that I was working with. And this is when small computers were very new. And no one knew what to do with it. And no one knew what to do with me either. So they put us together in a room to see what would happen. And boy, did I have fun with that. So I taught myself programming and learned a lot of good things. Wow,
terrific. So you move on, you become an astronaut. How many years from the start of NASA experience to actually getting into the astronaut program?
Oh, more than 20 years. Yeah, I think I started as a co-op student at NASA, intern at NASA in late 1974, and I started as an astronaut in 1995, and I worked in that job for 17 years in the astronaut business, but I logged 37 years with NASA in my career before I came back to UC Davis.
When they start putting together a crew, I'm sure there's a lot of skills that they look at, and there's obviously different jobs, but also just the intangible part of it. How do they determine and look at the personality typing and the cooperation and the lead and the follow? How do they put the psychological makeup of the crew together?
Well, I'm sure they could have used your skills, because clearly you have that ability, Coach.
I don't know.
And I'm sure that they could learn a lot from you. But one of the tricks they had, which is the same thing you do, is you watch your people very carefully. You try to learn about them as much as you can, about their obvious abilities, but also the abilities that maybe they don't even know about, which may have to do with very rapid problem solving, or recognizing that something needs to be done and taking action. This is true in any of these things that have short time scales, like your business and mine. And as a result, astronauts during their training are evaluated all the time, not just at the end of the test. If you're taught to do something new, they evaluate you the first time you do it, and the second time. And it's very annoying, because they're filming and writing things down, and if you make a mistake, you hear about it later. It's very annoying. It takes some getting used to, but after a while, it's kind of like being out on the field with a lot of people watching. You're in the fish bowl, and that's what you're there for. It's part of the excitement.
So you finally get selected to your first shuttle mission, and you're buckled up, looking up at the sky, I'm guessing, correct? And it's go time. So just take us back to your mind and your heart and your thought and just everything that was kind of going through your soul at that point.
Well, I fell asleep. You're laying on your back and you're packed in so tightly and you're strapped in with every kind of strap and wire and tube, and you're in a spacesuit that has a cooling system built in. You've got your helmet on, this giant helmet. You're breathing pure oxygen, which always feels good. And yeah, for the first time in many years, my to-do list was all done. And my dream was about to come true. And I was just totally relaxed, which seems impossible now that I think about it. But yeah, I took a nap. In fact, all 4 of my missions, I fell asleep on the launch pad. Sounds crazy.
So, but when the engine thrusters turned on, then you woke up, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, because it's, you go through all kinds of training with simulators, but they can't simulate what that feels like. There's no way. And I remember very clearly thinking, wow, here we go. And then a split second later, it was so violent. I remember thinking, maybe we're blowing up. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. What else can you do? You're strapped in. And just for a second there, I thought, this is probably not how it should be. But it was. This is the way it was. It was an extremely violent event to launch for a little while. And you're pretty busy. You have a lot to consider, a lot to watch. It's a very, very complicated spaceship. And it's shaking. I remember it shook so hard. I thought, how is this thing going to hold together? It all seems so delicate and complex to me. And yet it was shaking like a car going 90 miles an hour over a rough road. And I just couldn't imagine it's all going to still be working by the time we get to space.
They don't have any somewhat simulators before you get in that situation, or just can't even match it.
They do, and they do. It shakes you around a little bit, and we thought that was a pretty good shake, but it's nothing like the real thing. Nothing like it. I mean, when you get up on the launch pad in the shuttle days, it was a pretty big rocket. And when you would go up an elevator 195 feet up, and you weren't even anywhere near the top, but that's where you got in, and you'd be standing out on the kind of the gantry of the launch pad, looking at this rocket, and it's about the size and mass of about a 20-story building, and it looks like it's never going anywhere. It looks as permanent as a redwood tree. And so you get in, you get strapped up, you turn the spaceship on, check it out. About 3 hours later, you finally launch. And this 20-story building leaves the Earth like a squirrel, jumps into the sky. And 10 seconds later, you're going 100 miles an hour. 43 seconds later, you're going supersonic. You're going Mach 1 straight up into this giant machine. It is just, I've flown a lot of things in my life, but there's nothing hold a candle to a space shuttle.
One of my buddies, actually, Mike Bloomfield, was a pilot on at least 1 or 2 of those missions. And I know he told me once you kind of got up there, and I think where he was, it rotated over and he looked down and he kind of saw basically where Kitty Hawk was, and was just like amazed that not that long ago they were jumping off of mounds trying to fly, and here he is in a shuttle. Did you have some of those transcendent kind of feelings as well?
Oh, very much so. And by the way, Bloomer was a classmate of mine. We started the same time. Yeah. And yes, I remember very clearly, Coach, being outside doing a spacewalk, and I was, just outside the space shuttle, and I was waiting for my buddy Soichi Noguchi to come and join me. And so I had a minute to just hang out and look, which is a great luxury. And so there's the whole universe separated by about a 1/4 inch of plexiglass on my helmet from me. And I realized we're coming up kind of from the Pacific, going northeast across California. And I looked down and I could see, okay, there's the Gulf of Mexico. I could see San Diego. I could see LA. And I kind of followed Highway 5 up. And I realized, oh, there's the Bay Area. Easy to see the San Francisco Bay, and you're going 17,500 miles an hour. So this is coming pretty quick. And so I'm traveling up California, and there's the Bay Area. I can pick up 80. Okay, there's Fairfield and there's Vacaville, and I could maybe, I'm not sure if I could see Dixon. It seems like I could see Davis. I could see the Sacramento airport, and then I could see Sacramento. That's where I was born. And I was looking at my hometown and thinking of all the zigzag crazy path that took me to this spot. And now I've got a straight line of 250 miles between me and my hometown. That was one of the more dramatic things I've ever experienced.
Yeah, incredible. So I think it was on your third mission, correct, that you had a little problem with the heat shield, and so you drew straws and you were the guy, and I think you told me you hadn't even practiced that before. So just take us through that whole protocol of climbing out on the arm, and maybe we get to the end. We got some pictures here. You can comment on the pictures, but take us through that whole
Okay.
scenario.
Well, this was quite a mission. This was the mission after we lost the shuttle Columbia. And so Columbia came apart and we lost the crew, and NASA had to reinvent spaceflight. I mean, we just stood down, and we stood down for 2.5 years and reinvented spaceflight. We took a look at everything because there were some major mistakes made that led to that accident. So we thought, well, besides addressing those mistakes, what other mistakes are we making without knowing it? And then we had to do a lot of new things. And so when it finally became time for this, what we call the return to flight mission, I was on that crew led by Eileen Collins, a fantastic commander. We had a lot of experimental things to try. It was very much a test flight. And so we finally launched. And the reason what happened to Columbia had been a big chunk of foam insulation had come off the propellant tank and hit the shuttle. And so they re-engineered how they put on that foam and everything. And, you know, there was a lot of confidence that could not happen again. Well, first thing that happened is it did happen again. Big chunk of foam came off and went flying down at very high speed and missed our wing, just missed it. You could see it on the videos because now we had put video cameras on so we could see if things like that had happened. And so that was a shock for all the people that had worked so hard to make sure that wouldn't happen. It happened again. So we almost lost 2 shuttles in a row. Okay, so then we got up there, and one of the new things we learned to do was our job was to dock with the International Space Station. So we came up to the space station like this, and then we flipped the whole space shuttle over on an inspection pass. No one had ever done that before, so that was interesting. And the space station crew took detailed photographs of our heat shield on the belly of Discovery. And sure enough, there was a problem. There's dividers had, a couple of them had shaken out during the violence of launch between a couple of the heat shield tiles. Well, that doesn't seem like that bad a deal, except that there's something about fluid dynamics at a hypersonic speeds when you're coming back down to the atmosphere that they can be very, very damaging by generating more heat, or at least allowing more heat to touch the tiles and maybe the front of the wings. So the one thing that we were always told in training, for spacewalk training, is you're never going to get near the heat shield. It's much too delicate and important, and you're this big 600-pound thing in a suit, and you're never going to go there. So NASA Houston calls up and says, well, here's the deal. We've got these problems, and we're gonna have to do an emergency spacewalk right to where you were told you would never go. And because we thought we'd never go there, no one had ever done any training for it. So this led to a couple of super busy days. It's just like that Apollo 13 movie, you know, where folks on the ground were working on things and they were trying stuff in the underwater training facility, and the robot arm guys were trying new stuff they'd never done. We were chiming in as they sent us trial things. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? I got to make some tools using, you know, like my favorite materials, Velcro and duct tape. And in the end, we came up with a plan that worked perfectly. It was NASA at its best. And we all had a role. And the plan was something that we, in the crew, had, we had a say in it. And our opinions were taken into account. It just worked just beautifully. And so in the end, Soichi and I went outside, and I was picked up on the arm by Wendy Lawrence and Jim Kelly. And they were the heroes of the day because they had done something no one had ever done, which was manually control the arm with me on the end of it, all the way down under the space shuttle where nobody had ever been before. And I got to look at this heat shield, this big, beautiful space shuttle. I was right there, underneath it. Except I didn't feel like it was underneath. I felt like the arm had brought the space shuttle to me, which was pretty nice. We present you a discovery. And it was a neat flashback because when I started for NASA, we were still designing the space shuttle and we're testing the space shuttle in the wind tunnels. And I remember being part of the team. This is the part of me that used it now. So at that point, not this, they used these. So picking up this big stainless steel model of a space shuttle with 4 other guys and mounting it in the wind tunnel and looking at that beautiful curve of the belly of the shuttle, designed just so for aerodynamic perfection. And now here I am looking at the real thing, trying to save it so that we can actually go home. It worked out great.
Mark Honbo, let's run that video here of Steve right here. This is a video for those of you that are listening. You're going to have to go to the YouTube portion and watch it.
On, here we go. Okay, I'm grasping it and I'm pulling. It's coming out very easily. Beautiful. Very nice. Okay, Steve, DCA the arm back away. Yeah, I don't think they are either, but I just want to be sure.
Discovery Houston, we're happy with the video we have. No pictures necessary.
Excellent. Back to you, Steve.
And just so you know, we have a great downlink of Steve's WVS right now. We're really enjoying the view.
How's that, Steve?
That's a view from my helmet. There's a camera just on the side of my helmet up.
Brakes are on your go from M2. Thank you. Here we go. Play watching. Nicely done, Steve. Back to you to GCA away from there. Okay. I'd like to move away from the orbiter. Body aft. 5 feet, please. Body aft, and we're taking the brakes off and going back into mode. It'll be about 30 seconds here. Sounds great. Okay, that came out very easily, probably even less force. It looks like this big patient is cured.
So just take us through when you're reaching for that piece of hanging out of the heat shield and you knowing how delicate it is.
Yeah, it's delicate, and something sticking out of a surface like that during entry has an amazing power to be destructive by generating extra heat. So I told my commander, well, there were 2 of them, and one of them didn't seem to me to be that bad. So I said, okay, we're going to do that one for practice, but I'm not coming back in without getting that second one out because I'm not sure we're going to get home okay if we don't. And boy, I was ready for everything. Man, I had pliers. I had a hacksaw that I had made. I had a number of other tools. And as you can see, the only tools I used were these guys. Pulled it right out. It was no problem at all. But access had everybody holding their breath because here you are, huge. And if I'd even touched with my helmet that heat shield, the outer layer is glass of the heat shield. And I would probably do more damage than I fixed if I touched it at all. So that's why I moved so slowly and so carefully. And I positioned Soichi so he could see me to the side and all this stuff. So we didn't, and this is how life is, right? A lot of times you're challenged with things you have initially no idea how to do because you haven't done it before. You think, gosh, I'm out of my league here. I've never done this. How do I know how? And you realize if you've done enough other things, if you've been challenged in a number of different ways, the combination of your creativity, your skill, and your confidence can take you to new heights that you didn't really know you had the capability of reaching. And we did that as a team on that day. And you can go to Washington Dulles airport at the National Air and Space Museum, and you can see Discovery, and you can walk right under Discovery and see the view that you just saw in that video. And then in another part of the Smithsonian, you can see that piece of material that I pulled out. You see me holding in my hand. It's mounted there in a display.
And then what kind of celebration took place when you got back inside?
We were pretty happy. It was our third spacewalk in 5 days, and so we had done a lot of work, and we felt like, you know, this is what humans do best. And people talk all the time about space programs. Maybe they should be robotic, just entirely robotic, because humans are so delicate and expensive, and then if something happens, everybody feels so bad. But robots can't deal with, you know, anomalies and malfunctions like that, like humans can. The ingenuity and the ability to generate new skills and use tools in new ways, or old tools in the wrong ways that turn out to be right. This is what humans do really well. So it's usually a mix of robots and autonomy and human explorers that have the best chance of succeeding when you're off the map.
Yeah, in the space program, I know you coordinate with a number of other countries and other programs, and I think you spent some time in Russia, correct? And obviously some coordination there, and the space station, and just talk about the uniqueness of that, of coordinating your technology with other people's technology, and then obviously the social part of it.
Well, the space program in general is an international one, and the space station is called the ISS, or the International Space Station, for a really good reason. It's always been, and we're coming up to 20 years of people continuously on the space station this fall. I've been there twice myself. You can watch it go overhead. It's just this incredible feat of human engineering. And it's not there because having people in space is the most important thing in the world. It's there, as I said before, to generate knowledge that we never could have known any other way. Knowledge about human physiology, human psychology, all kinds of engineering and technology. And this requires, if you're really going to do it right, this requires the human race, an international effort. Well, now that's really interesting, because now you've got countries working together who their engineering cultures are different, but really respect each other. So they learn how to work together. They don't become one another. They learn how to interleave and do things that either one of them could not have done before. And they can do this at the same time that their state departments are doing this. So we've proven over these 20 years, once again, that international efforts on the forefront of knowledge, based on research and technology and daily improvements in understanding, bring peoples together. Even if governments can't be together, the peoples come together. So the space program has always been a wonderful tool and kind of a learning laboratory for trying to understand how to do that.
Before we get into your research you're doing now, and as we're trying to launch out to Mars and beyond the space station, I want Mark Honbo to throw back up those pictures again, and just have you comment a little bit before we kind of get to the next phase of your career. I think there's some great shots of you and your selfie, and again, a better shot of you on that robot arm. Oh, here we go.
Well, there's one that needs no explanation. There's a happy Aggie.
Where is that, Steve?
Yeah, that is on the International Space Station. It's in the Japanese experiment module. Part of the space station is Japanese, part of it is US, part of it is Russian, part is the European Space Agency. The robot arm was built by Canada, and lots of other parts were built by folks in other countries. This was during, let's see, I think my last mission, STS-130. And I brought up a UC Davis flag up there. There's another UC Davis graduate who's been there, is Tracy Caldwell Dyson.
Oh, is that right?
Got her PhD in chemistry here. And she's been up to the space station also, and she still is an astronaut. In fact, I believe she's giving the commencement address here at UC Davis in fall. Excuse me, in June. So Tracy's a real hero and also a great singer in the rock and roll band.
Oh, that's part of the. Here we go. Space selfie.
Yeah, well, okay. So this camera has a story behind it. This was the first digital camera ever taken outside. Just happened to be on our mission. And I was very happy about that because I'm a very avid amateur photographer. And I just love the fact that I got to take the first digital camera outside. Normally we had, film cameras, and they would only have 24 to 36 shots. This thing had, I don't know, about 250 shots. And I remember saying to the commander, when I come back, they're all going to be full. I'm going to take every picture I can. And they said for this emergency space heat shield repair, they said, no, don't take the camera. It's just an extra thing to be in the way. And I told Houston, I said, well, don't you want pictures of that heat shield? Isn't that the whole point? And no one's ever been under here before. You'll get pictures, inspection pictures, and we'll have full confidence that we'll be able to come home safely, and on and on and on. I really gave them finally they said, okay. But really, I just wanted to take digital pictures. And, and I remember when I was done with the job and it was successful, I thought, I wish I had a wide angle lens to take a nice picture of this heat shield. And then I realized I was wearing one. So I turned it around and got a space shuttle selfie like that.
Terrific.
Oh, this was taken at just about the same time by Eileen Collins, the commander of Discovery on this mission, looking out the window of Discovery, and got this picture of me way out on the end of this this wonderful aerospace engineering product from Canada, my parents' home country, which made everybody in my family very happy.
That is just an amazing shot to me. You were out there in the middle of nowhere, attached to a little arm like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, the arm seemed a little small for a while there. But after a while, it was a wonderful privilege to be able to do that. And now you see one of the bands I play in, Bandella. So from the left on flute is Katie Coleman. In the middle is Chris Hadfield. And next is Mickey Pettit, whose husband is Don Pettit, who is an astronaut. And then on the far right, our keyboard player, Dave Webb, lives right here in town in Davis.
Oh, really?
I've known Dave for about 40 years. We both worked at the campus radio station, KDVS, and he's a fantastic musician. In fact, he may be the only musician in that band.
Let me just kind of segue there a little bit. We can kind of get to your video here in a second, but I actually listened to a guy talk whose father had worked with Einstein, and these Nobel laureates used to get together on the East Coast and they tried to figure out what they all had in common. Well, one of the things, they all got in trouble for playing with fire. I don't know. Did you do that? You played with fire? No.
No, I totally plead guilty to that.
Okay.
I tried to, but it wasn't, for me, playing with fire wasn't enough. I wanted to launch things, and fire was a great way to get things going fast. I guess.
And then the other one was they all played a musical instrument.
Oh, yeah.
I know that you play multiple. Tell us all the instruments you play, and just talk about the weaving. You have all these people that would think are super nerds, these astronauts, but then you have all these people that have this other side of the brain capability as well. Talk about that.
Well, astronauts are super nerds, definitely. But to me, and I think to a lot of people, musical ability and propensity for mathematics, it's the same thing. It feels, I think it's in the same part of my brain. And I think this is true for a lot of people. So the astronaut community has always had lots of musicians. And it just worked out that way. And I started, I had my interest in music started as a really little kid too. And I ended up playing, I played tuba in the Calagee Marching Band. I marched at football games.
Yes.
I was terrible at formation marching, but I was pretty good at playing the instrument. Yeah, I remember going down to Hickey Field and marching there when I was when I was here as an undergraduate. But I played all a lot of the lower end of the brasses. You know, I played trombone and tuba and baritone. But I started learning stringed instruments, so I played banjo and mandolin and guitar and stand-up bass and working on pedal steel and cello. So I love music. It's a fantastic form of creativity that can demand things of your brain that other things just don't do. And you can take it anywhere. You know, where your music is, for me, where my music is, where home is. So I take my music to space. I had a guitar up there on the space station. It was pretty nice.
Well, your partner's rendition of Ground Control to Major Tom is pretty epic. That's epic.
Well, Chris is a genius. How he thought of doing that and his ability to perform is amazing. And in that band, Bandella, we've played here. We played in Winters at the Palms Playhouse.
I was there.
Oh, you were there? You saw us?
I was. That was my first attraction to you. That was the first time I sort of became a Steve Robinson groupie.
Oh. Well, it's mutual, sir. It's mutual. But that was a great time. And Chris is a wonderful entertainer, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So we play around the country, not very often. Last year we played in Houston. We played in Massachusetts. We're going to play in Galveston, Texas next as soon as we're able to. But we've got a big show to do down there. So yeah, it's great.
Mark Honvo, why don't you roll that? Let's roll that video of the rock star. This guy's unbelievable. He's an astronaut. And he's also a rock star. So
this is a different band. This is Max Q, the all astronaut rock and roll band.
When I was a young girl, still put away those young girl ways. Now that I'm getting older, so much older, I love all those young girl days with a boy like you. With a boy like you.
Are those people astronauts?
Yeah, they are, and that is Tracy Caldwell Dyson, the Aggie singing lead. Isn't she great?
Okay. How about that?
Yeah, she's just amazing. She's a wonderful person, and so that's a different band, Max Q, and we're still going too. We played for a big conference of teachers back in February in Houston, and that band's been around for an awful long time. So I've been in both of those
Max
bands.
Q, the derivation of the Max Q name. What is the? That's an astronaut term, is it not? Max Q. What is that?
Oh yeah, you know let's have a little engineering here.
Okay.
When a rocket takes off, there's something called dynamic pressure that is impeding its progress. Dynamic pressure is the velocity squared times the density. So when just before your launch, you have no velocity. So the dynamic pressure is 0. When you get up past the atmosphere, you have no density. So the dynamic pressure is 0. So somewhere in between, the dynamic pressure is at its maximum, its peak. And the letter that we use for that is Q. So that is max Q. And it's where the rocket feels the most chaotic motion. It makes the most noise. It's the most dangerous. It's a perfect name for a rock and roll band.
Okay. So how long into the launch before you hit that section? You said it was 5 minutes to start.
Yeah, you go through max Q in less than a minute. That's usually about 45 seconds, right around when you go sonic velocity. And the whole launch is about 8.5 minutes. So you go through max Q pretty soon. And it's good to get through max Q because if you're going to fly apart and blow up, that's usually where it's going to happen. So once you get past that, you're feeling good.
Oh, you just say that so casually. It's unbelievable. You're so cavalier about that.
There's nothing worse than astronaut humor.
Well, you probably have to have a little bit of that, I would guess, to make it happen, I guess. Otherwise, you're too.
All pilots have that. All pilots have some version of that. You get a bunch of pilots together, and it's just terrible. I don't recommend it.
The first plane I was ever in, I flew it. I was 15 years old.
Really?
I ground school done. I had dreams of being a pilot. I grew up in a little dinky town, and I flew a Cessna 150.
Yeah.
And still remember that I took off, actually. My instructor was there. I was 15 years old, pulled the throttle back, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I had to get to 77 miles an hour. I think that was I had to get to 77, and I pulled it back, and he said, you need to pull on it a little harder. I thought we were going to flip over, but I did. I actually flew the first plane I was ever in. It was pretty spectacular.
You know, that's the wonderful thing about aviation, is that you can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that. It's you know, we have this airport at UC Davis, and it is the only California university with its own airport. And it's an incredible thing. I use it for teaching, and we have a research lab out there, and students, you know, it's not cheap to learn to fly, so not a lot of students can do it. But just, especially if you're an aerospace engineer, just being around things that can fly and around people that know how to make it happen is a good thing. It's part of the education. And now we have a quite sophisticated flight simulator out there that's part of my research lab. You climb in this cockpit. We'll have to take you over there, Coach. It's just like it's 2-seat, looks just like a Cessna on the inside, and the whole thing moves around inside a room, and it feels very much and looks very much like you're flying.
So back behind you there, again, if you're listening, you don't see this, but we've got the Human Robotics Vehicle Integration and Performance. And I know I believe a couple years ago, you got a big grant from NASA, and you've got several different projects going on. So just walk us through the things that are on the forefront of your research right now.
Okay, well, let's start at the top. UC Davis recently established something called the Center for Spaceflight Research. It's at the campus level. And they appointed me as the director of that. And that is to do exactly what it says. It's all manner of spaceflight research. It's a great opportunity for Davis to have a much bigger footprint in a really exciting field. And it doesn't just involve engineering. It involves physiology, and it involves psychology, materials science. You know, it's so many aspects of actually trying to fly safely. And this center is try to bring together all the different threads that do that. So we're just sort of establishing it now. It's very exciting. It's a little fuzzy, and you know, trying to define where we should be. And part of that is my research laboratory, which is a big lab, the Human Robotics Vehicle Integration and Performance Lab, which is a real mouthful, and we like it that way because it says so many different things. We can do anything and we'll still be under appropriate. So I've usually got about 20 to 25 different students in the lab, about half graduate students, half undergrads. I really believe that undergraduate research opportunities are super important. And we pick the best students we can possibly find. And all of our students end up going to the industry, going to NASA, going to other universities. It's been a great place for people to learn to work together for some of the hardest things we think there is to do, which is try to understand how spaceflight can be better. But mostly, it's that human part. We're trying to figure out how humans can do a better thing, more kind of survive better in hazardous environments, using engineering, using neuroscience, using cognitive psychology, bringing these people together that normally wouldn't work together to do things that haven't been done before. So we've got all kinds of interesting research projects. We've got several grants from NASA. And I'll just tell you about one. NASA decided to fund at a very high level a space technology research institute outside of the NASA walls. And the reason is they wanted ideas that NASA itself couldn't come up with. That's what they said. They said, if we did this ourselves, we'd come up with the same ideas we already have and then just propagate them. We want something new. So they did a competition, a nationwide competition. Universities built teams to compete for it. And we won it on the basis of the strength of our team. And this is really what it all comes down to. I know you believe that. And we built a team with UC Davis in the lead, but has University of Colorado at Boulder, USC, Howard University in Washington, D.C., Texas A&M, Carnegie Mellon University, and Georgia Tech, all together, a big team. And so with all the different professors and all the different graduate students, There's about 55 people in this group now. And our job is to come up with a technology for deep space, long duration habitats where people can live. But the trick is people won't always be there. So sometimes people will be there, and sometimes it'll go for maybe a couple of years with nobody there. So this has to have an ability to have automated self-maintenance, but when the people are there, then you have to integrate human capability, like I was talking about before, with the automation and the robotics inside the spacecraft. Very complicated, very cutting edge in every way. And the key is to integrate all these different disciplines and to draw from fields of architecture, civil engineering, manufacturing, reliability that aren't always in the spacecraft engineering realm. So we're building a team like there's never been before. So it's very exciting. It's called the Habitats Optimized for Missions of Exploration, and the acronym is HOME. Okay, that's what it all comes down to.
So what is the next move? What's the next move in space?
Well, on Friday, NASA released the information that they had chosen 3 major companies to develop the next moon lander for humans, to land humans on the moon. This is just the most exciting thing. And so the 3 companies are Dynetics, which is a space technology company that has a bunch of other companies in the team. One company is SpaceX, which we know about, to land on the moon and take humans there. And another company is Blue Origin, and which is leading up a team of aerospace companies also. All 3 are funded by NASA to start designing concepts for landing humans on the moon. And UC Davis, this just got announced on Friday, I think, or Thursday. We're not sure how we're going to play a role, but I guarantee you we will. So check back and I'll be able to let you know.
So I want to know, are you going to be in mission control, or are you going to be in the module that goes there?
Oh my goodness, I'd love to be in the module that goes to the moon, but you know what I tell you, I was talking about dreams before. So here's my dream now. I'm an educator. I'm a professor at one of the best universities on planet Earth. I think the most wonderful thing would be for one of my students from my research lab to become an astronaut and go to the moon. Now that would be a full circle. That would be a wonderful thing for this campus, I think. And for sure, I'd love it. And it's not impossible at all. The quality of the folks we have coming through the campus and through the engineering program absolutely can be qualified to be astronauts.
I actually, a while back, they said you can apply to be an astronaut, and I got on there, I was going to apply to be an astronaut, but it wouldn't upload my resume. I had to do it manually. So I said, so they phased me out in the first level of the evaluation. They said he doesn't want to manually upload his resume. But I'm not sure what a football coach would do, but I don't know. I keep everybody motivated, I guess. I don't know. So.
Oh, your job. So here's what your job would be at NASA, Coach. Okay. Your job would be, there's a job called flight director. And the flight director is the person who is the boss of mission control. Remember watching the Apollo 13 movie? The guy with the crew cut?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gene Kranz. And he had he was the coach of the room, wasn't he? He motivated his people to do their best and then go beyond their best to do something that as a team, no one had ever done before. That's your job. So
this
you would be the flight director.
Hour.
And failure is not an option,
Yeah.
You are the flight director.
Oh, I just have chills thinking about that. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to come over there in your lab, but if you saw my transcripts, I would never make it on your crew. You'd be like, I don't know about that. So.
Well, I think actually, let's make a deal. I had a great time coming and talking to the team. The next time I do that, let's do a reciprocal visit. I'll talk to the team. You talk to my lab students. And we'll cross motivate. Okay.
It would be absolutely terrific.
Okay.
So let's end it on this. You've obviously spent some time in isolation, and we have a lot of people spending time in isolation now. I read a little bit of some of your comments, but just talk to the folks a little bit about how you put life in isolation in perspective.
It is a real challenge. I have spent quite a bit of time in isolation, deep isolation, I might say. we have the advantage of at least going outside, but it's a dangerous world out there. And we all have an underlying fear and concern and stress, and people are having a hard time sleeping, and that doesn't help anything. My approach is always find a way to help other people. The best way to help yourself is to help other people. It's just like you do in this program here. You're helping the community by bringing people together to talk about things they hadn't thought about before and meet people they hadn't met. If you can find, no matter who you are, you can help somebody else by reaching out. And this isn't any hard to figure out philosophy, but it is what works for me. And I'm really fortunate to be at a university and I have a whole bunch of students to work with. I'm teaching classes. Earlier today I met online with a couple of teams who are doing their senior design project in engineering. In fact, the team I met with is building a lunar excavation machine. Because if you want to live on the moon, you probably better be underground to avoid radiation. So what should do the excavation? We're not going to get some giant backhoe up there. So what are we going to have? And they have designed something really super clever. So this is the way I deal with isolation, is find a way to give.
Yeah, terrific. Well, super honored. I just really have the utmost respect for you. I think we always talk about quality, balance of life. You seem to have mastered that. I love that you are a giving soul, and you came back to Davis, and you like to be at Davis for the right reasons. I have a lot of fondness for this place as well, but we're super proud of you. Glad you represent UC Davis, and you certainly inspire me and inspire a lot of others to do uncommon things and to think uncommonly and to literally shoot for the stars. And someday you may also be a rock star. So
Coach, I think I reflect all the same back with you. I think our whole community, regardless of how we think about sports, has great respect for you and how much you care and draw together our community in so many different ways. And this podcast is a great example. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck in your research. Go Aggies.
Go Ags. All right, take care.